Hey ISP, figured I'd make a video for you because we've been quarantined for this whole time, and why not learn a few things moving forward in the interim while we're stuck in our houses. So here's a little lesson I put together, kind of doing it off the cuff. What we're going to do is figure out how we can determine the key of a song using just the chord changes. So picture this scenario. You have all the chords to a song, you looked them up online, right? And you found the chords that maybe a guitar player would play. But you don't know what key you're playing in, so you don't know what scale to use for all the notes that go in between the chord tones that you know how to figure out. And so without the key, you don't know where to begin with what notes are where, right? And so what this is going to do is going to show you a little trick to find out what key you're playing in just using the chord changes. This works for pop songs for the most part, because pop songs generally follow a very simple guideline of just playing in one key. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take a song you want to learn. I think last week we worked on Bad Romance, so I pulled that up, I pulled the chord changes up on my computer, looked them up on some website that just has all the chords and the lyrics, right? And so if you want to find what key you're playing in, the good first trick is to just write down every chord you see in a row, right? So every new chord. So there's A minor, I see first, right? And then I see a C next. And then there's a bunch more A minor, and then there's an F chord, I see. And then scrolling down, I see a G chord, and an E minor chord, and I don't see too much else. So, just double checking, I don't see any other chords in this song. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chords in the song, and there are 7 scale notes, right? So all we're going to do for the first step here is to just write these in alphabetical order. It's going to help us organize things a little bit better, so that A comes first. And then I'm going to draw a little blank because there's no B. And then C major, and then I'm going to draw a little blank here because there's no D, and then there's an E minor, an F major, a G major, and so we're missing these 2 chords. Okay? Now, one thing I want you to remember, and you should probably memorize this as best you can, that the major scale, the chords of the major scale fall in this pattern. And we've talked about this. The 1 chord is major, the 2 chord is minor, the 3 chord is minor. So if it's lowercase, that means minor. 4 chord is major, 5 chord is major, 6 chord is major, 7 chord is the weird one with diminished, right? And so if we're in the key of C major, we just apply the C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. The C chord will be major, the D chord will be minor, the E chord will be minor, the F chord will be major, the G chord will be major, the A chord will be minor, and the B chord will be diminished. So we have to kind of find where these fit in regards to this, right? And so we can kind of just take a guess. Like, let's say we see a G as a major chord, right? So if we write the G major scale here, just as a guess, this would be minor because it's the 2. This is minor, and this is minor. Now, does this match this? Good question. A is minor, that's good. C is major, that's also good. E is minor, that's good. F is major. But here's an F sharp, right? So one thing that you can kind of do is look at the accidentals and start guessing that way too. But F sharp is not, it's half diminished. G is major, right? So we have one exception to the rule. The other is that the D chord isn't listed here, but because we have all three major chords represented, right, you can tell already that this does not fit. So the song Bad Romance is not in the key of G. That was wrong. So it might take a little bit of trial and error to kind of figure out the right one. But as you get better and better at this, you can start to just look and kind of eyeball and see, well, how does this work? One thing is that there's these two major chords right in a row, right? They're right next to each other. They're one letter apart. Here is two major chords, one letter apart, F and G. That seems to fit really well, doesn't it? And then we have an E minor chord here, a D minor chord here, a C. So it's looking like we're in the key of C major. A minor chord here, and the B half diminished. Notice that that doesn't exist in this song, right? So that's our blank space. The other blank space is this D minor chord. So there's no 2 chords in Bad Romance, there's no 7 chords in Bad Romance. And so now that you've found the key, you can decide, you can know that you can play in the C major scale. So when you're improvising or playing, you know the melody falls in the C major scale, you know that whatever you're going to play is going to be within the C major scale. There's not going to be any F sharps, there's not going to be any D sharps, right? Granted, there are exceptions to this rule, especially in classical music and jazz music. For pop music, this is going to work, almost guaranteed. Excuse me. So, from here you can find out what notes are in the chord, right? Because it's every other letter, right? Now that you know your key, you know there's no sharps or flats, you're not going to run into any mistakes with the accidentals. And so, so your first chord was an A minor, and A going every other letter is A, C, E, right? A, B, C, D, E. C chord, F chord, F, A, C, every other letter, F, G, A, B, C. G, B, D, D, G, B. So what you can do is write all those in to the music that you're looking at, and suddenly you know exactly what notes you can play that fit the chord, and you know exactly what scale to play to fit the chords, right? And so suddenly you're up and running, you can improvise. And it's just that simple. So let's do another one. I'm going to pull up, what was the other song we looked at? We looked at Paparazzi. So let's look up Paparazzi. So pretty much a simple Google search, Paparazzi chords. Right? And so there's all these like tab websites, you know, that you can look up. And you can kind of find a page that just has the chords and lyrics written above them. Usually the lyrics are written with the chords above them. Okay. So I'm just going to start writing down the chords I see. It's that simple. So B minor is the first thing I see. G. And then there's this crazy looking G major 7. I'm going to write that down too. Now we don't talk about these chords very often, but one of these days I'm going to do a little clinic on what all these extra information. It's called a chord suffix. So this is the chord and this is the chord suffix. This changes the way the chord sounds. Whenever you see a number 7, a number 9, a number 11, a number 13, that means that you're adding a note to the chord. So rather than it just being 3 notes, you're going to add a 7th, a 9th. Sometimes there's a 2, sometimes there's a 6, and I can describe why they use those numbers and all that stuff at a later time. You know, for now, it's pretty simple to just note if it's major or minor. This looks like a major chord to me. Okay, and then let's see what other chords are in here. I'm going to scroll down. I see an E minor. Let's just keep that consistent. I see a D and a C major chord. And I don't see much else. Okay, there should be plenty for us to go off of. For now, we can just ignore this G major 7 because we already have a G major regular. Alright, so we're going to put these in alphabetical order. Looks like we have B minor first, C, D, E minor, and G. Alright, so we're going to write this down here. Our memorized 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1 chord is major, 2 chord is minor, 3 chord is minor, 4 chord is major, 5 chord is major, 6 chord is minor, 7 chord is F diminished. You'll never see this used. It's like hardly ever used. Okay, so remember that trick we used before. We have these 2 minor chords right next to each other we can use. If you see 2 minor chords that are 1 letter apart, or if you see 2 major chords that are 1 letter apart, suddenly you kind of figured out your scale, right? And already I see a C major chord and a D major chord right next to each other, right? And so all we have to do is write C here and D here, and then fill in the rest of the alphabet. E, F sharp. And then going backwards, B, A, G. This song is in the key of G major. And you notice that there's no F sharps represented in any of these chords, like at face value. There's no F sharp chord. And so you might forget that you're supposed to play this note. You might try and play in C major because you thought, well, I don't see any sharps and flats. So that would have been a pitfall. They're actually in the key of G. So let's write in our minors. Okay. So, paparazzi in the key of G. And so now, when you're looking at the chords, you can fill in what notes they are. Right? So the first chord was a B minor chord. That is a D. Oh, sorry. A D and an F sharp. Okay. The second chord is a G chord. G, B, D. Right? The next chord is a, what was it, an E minor chord? Keep forgetting that. E, G, B, D chord, D, F sharp, A, and C was C, E, G. And remember, that's just every other letter. B, C, D, E, F sharp. G, B, D. E, G, B, D, F sharp, A. And so now you have all the notes that are in your chords, and you know what scale you're supposed to use to solo on those chords, right? So you try and land on chord tones and play scales that lead into chord tones. And so you can look at the music, figure it out, and play with your guitar player friend or somebody who doesn't know how to read music. suddenly you know what you're doing. Alright guys, I hope you're hanging in there, and I hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you on the other side. Alright, thanks, bye.